What's up guys, this is Chit Chat with Joshua. Today, I'll be discussing the topic of feminism. That's right, feminism. A topic that many of you would believe to be rather self-explanatory. But when you look at it slightly closer, when you examine it more closely, you realize that there's more than meets the eye. So today, I'll be discussing how feminism has changed over the last 150 years and why while I identify as a traditional feminist, I'm certainly not a feminist in today's sense of the word. So sit back and enjoy yourself as we embark on this journey through the history of feminism, the truths that are never spoken. But first, let me set the context and illustrate why, in recent years, there's been quite some pushback against the modern feminism. In today's progressive society, you would be hard-pressed to find individuals, anywhere in the world really, who vehemently believe that women are inferior to men, that they really belong in the kitchen and should be submissive to males. Nearly everyone you meet will instead argue the exact opposite, that women should be treated with the same level of respect as men. So with nearly everyone in a consensus, why has the support for feminism in recent years actually dwindled? Well, quite simply, feminism today has evolved to the point where it's no longer comparable to what it seemed to be in the past. This is because it's far evolved the original intention of feminism, where feminists purely intended for feminism to be used to achieve a society of egalitarianism. In fact, what a feminist today is drastically different to what they were 150 years ago. Due to the extremity of modern feminist beliefs, a growing number of people, both men and women, have become disenfranchised with the concepts and ideals behind modern feminism. As such, it has driven many individuals to claim outright that they are anti or post-feminist. This is because they feel feminism has become akin to Nazism due to its perverse and perceived persecution of male. You would think that such a viewpoint is rather extreme, but in reality, it's exactly where we currently find ourselves with feminism. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'll be dividing feminism into 4 different waves, which are characterized with different traits, and different proponents of all 4 waves are claiming to be feminist. So to begin with, I'll start with wave 1, which essentially existed from around 1848 I believe, to the 1920s. This was where women protested and marched while being arrested and ridiculed for their acts. These women pursued things like political equality and the right to vote or suffrage, as well as property rights and equal contracts in marriage. As expected, first wave feminism first swept through the more modern and Western progressive nations in the world, such as UK and US, before being incorporated in Commonwealth nations under Queen Victoria. Second wave feminists actually come many years later, from the 1960s to 1980s. Today, the second wave of feminism is more famously known as the women's liberation movement. These feminists argued that ending gender discrimination and pushed on areas other than suffrage, like reform in legislature, governing marital rape and family laws. So these second wave feminists argued for greater economic freedom, more independence from their husbands, such that they will be seen as equals in marriage, as opposed to being a ward or a child, relative to the husband's relative to the respect that their husband achieves or receives. These feminists had also become increasingly tired of societal gender norms at the time, which were accepted as truths. A classic example of this is the supposed truth of the viewpoint that women must be housewives, as it was their place. If they were unhappy there, it meant that something is wrong with them. This is an example of a societal norm at that time, which women simply weren't going to take anymore. So feminists also saw women's cultural and political inequalities as being inseparable. They were actually seemed to be intrinsically linked. In fact, these feminists encourage women to see their personal lives as being an oppressive existence due to the patriarchal society. And from this notion, the famous phrase, "the personal is political," was born. In terms of their actions, these feminists attempted to be seen as equals to their male counterparts by rejecting things that made them seem girly. They reduced their usage of bras, makeup, high heels, and other accessories that typically is associated with females. They also asserted that being called girls was unacceptable as they weren't children. Instead, they preferred to be referred to as women or ladies. This is because they saw such an act where they were called women and ladies as affording them the same level of dignity and respect that was naturally given to their male counterparts. However, sadly and unfortunately enough, these actions actually had the opposite effect of what they expected. It heavily backfired on feminists, as these women were rapidly portrayed as being hairy, shrill, unfeminine creatures that no man would ever be interested in. Essentially, these women became second-rate men in the eyes of society, as opposed to achieving status of being first-rate women. Let me repeat that. After the women's liberation movement in the 60s to 80s, unfortunately there was backlash which led to women being seen as second-rate men as opposed to first-rate women. So now that we've covered the second wave of feminism, let's move on to the third. The third wave of feminism was rampant from 1990s to 2010. The third wave, in many ways, actually went directly against what the second wave had accomplished. These third wave feminists embraced punk rock and rejected the second wave's ideologue that there were actually intrinsic female traits in women. They argued that these intrinsic traits were simply based off the overemphasized experiences of upper class white women. Another feature of third wave feminism was the vigorous debates that occurred between the two sub-factions within the third wave. These two groups of feminists can be characterized as being difference feminists who believed that there were intrinsic psychological differences between the sexes, and those who believed that the differences between the sexes was due to socio-cultural norms. With regards to this debate, the difference feminists are in fact the ones who are correct, as they have evidence and empirical data on their side. If you're interested in exactly what this data is and what was the intrinsic psychological traits that is typically associated with women, check out my previous video on the differences between males and females. So moving on, another aspect that the third wave feminists fought against was sexual harassment in the workplace, and they prioritized raising the number of women in power. So they supported policies which would simply increase the number of women women managers or board of directors, even if it came at the cost of a fall in quality of workers. Another thing they did was to replace the term girl with GRRL. So let me spell that out. GRRL. A new term which was a reference to, at that time, feminist punk rock group, right? GRRL. Man, I'm finding difficulty in even pronouncing that. Girl, GRRL. Yeah, feminist punk rock group, right? GRRL. They reassociated with ideas and aesthetics that second wave feminists had actually rejected. Like third wave feminists re-embraced high heels and makeup. This was because third wave feminists actually believed that the very rejection of girliness was actually misogynistic. These feminists then argued that girliness was not less valued than manliness, and attempted to bring back value to women striving to be first-rate women as opposed to second-rate men. And now finally, moving on to fourth wave feminists. Fourth wave feminism began in 2011 and is alive today. It is defined by the rise of technology and social media giants like Facebook and Instagram, where feminism was pushed heavily through usage of hashtags like hashtag #MeToo, hashtag Time's Up. Fourth wave feminists actually fight against sexual harassment as well, but they focused on it through usage of new media. The fourth wave feminists also took up the fight against rape culture and body shaming. Due to the power and reach of social media today, fourth wave feminists have been successful in bringing down some of the most powerful males in a variety of industries and bringing to light their predatory nature. However, in recent years, there's been increasing infighting and backlash between second wave and fourth wave feminists. The fundamental reason for their argument is that second wave feminists essentially argue that if you dress up pretty, apply your makeup, your high heels, wearing a cute dress, put it crudely, spread your legs when a man tells you to do it, in exchange for a job or promotion or a higher salary, it's considered equal to consent. It's too late now to start whining about it and using social media to shame these men and while bolstering your own image in the public eye as a victim. Due to this being a major point of contention, second wave feminists and fourth wave feminists have characterized each other in rather demeaning or, well, negative manners. Second wave feminists are seen as shrill, old, militant and man-hating people who get in the way of their daughter's sexual liberation, while fourth wave feminists are seen as foolish, boy-crazy pseudo-feminists who squander their mother's feminist gains by taking them for granted. Now that I've laid out how feminism has evolved over the last 150 years, I'd like to leave you with my thoughts on where today's feminist gets it wrong. Today, the political movement known as feminism has sadly, once again, led to first-rate women striving to become second-rate men. These women have been pushed to give up traditional feminine values and embrace male values due to the illogical and simply incorrect idea that female values are somehow inferior to male ones. Like, I never understood it. Why would building and providing a home by earning a lot of money and protecting your family, which is typically seen as a male value, be seen as superior to a female value of sacrificing your time, your years, your body, your youth, and all that effort to nurture a child, the very future of our society? Like, I couldn't comprehend how could that be seen as inferior. I mean, without housewives, who would help to build up a conducive and loving atmosphere to call home? Society itself will descend into chaos as the next generation grows up to be a rowdy bunch because they felt unloved and uncared for during their childhood. So at the end of the day, all that I'm saying is that if you wish to work and not be a housewife, that's entirely fine. More power to you, but don't do it due to societal pressure, where housewives are looked down upon as compared to businesswomen. To quote Simone de Beauvoir, a founder of contemporary feminism, "No woman should be authorized to stay at home to raise her children. Society should be totally different. Women should not have that choice, precisely because if there is such a choice, too many women will make that one." Now, given that statement came from a founder of contemporary feminism, and taking into account everything I've laid out for you in the previous 10 minutes or so, I have one question for you. Exactly what type of feminist do you consider yourself to be, if a feminist at all?